Baseball is back. But now the question is, are you guys ready to win your leagues? Well, we're going to cover the 3 things that you need to know in order to make sure you win your leagues and do better than you've ever done. So stay tuned.
Hey, David and Taco, they bring the heat. All about UFC, way more than a fantasy. Let's see who going toe to toe. Throw down on the mat, check the replay, run it back. We gotta check the stats. Hey, do this every day. We ain't come to play. This is sports talk, and we love talking MMA. Everything fantasy sports. Dopest show that I know. With Electric Dave and talented Mr. Taco. Let's go. Hey, G.
What up? What up? What up? It's your boy, the talented Mr. Taco, here with Ricky for another episode of Fantasy Sports Talk, or what we like to call our TDS High Heat. That we're going to call this going forward. Ricky, how you feeling? Are you ready for some baseball?
Man, I'm excited. This weekend is coming up. We have a draft coming up Sunday. I know a bunch of you guys have a draft coming up this weekend. I'm ready to go.
Yep.
It feels like it's forever we've been waiting for baseball.
Right. And I think the one thing about baseball for a lot of us fans last year is we got half a season. Yeah. So it just doesn't feel the same. Like, that whole spring wasn't there. So we got at the tail end of it. We felt a little bit of it, but we missed the whole, because honestly, for baseball, I feel like more than any other sport, opening day is its own type of lore. Yeah. And just like opening day for baseball, fantasy baseball has its own type of lore and its own type of traditions and settings, unlike many of these other leagues. And I think that's what makes fantasy baseball so unique and so special. It has a near and dear place in my heart, and I know Ricky's as well. We've been playing these leagues for a long time. There's a lot of smack talk because it's fun.
It's a long season.
Yeah.
Especially coming from New York, we got the 2 teams. Yep. I don't like the Yankees.
I don't like the Mets.
You don't like the Mets. So, and this season, listen, with all the offseason acquisitions, the trades, like I said, I'm ready to go. Like you said, last season was kind of just a quick fix.
Yep.
And but I'm ready to go for the 162 games.
I will say this, though. One thing that everyone does love during baseball is being able to talk smack and bragging rights. And you cannot get smack talking and bragging rights without winning, people. That's just how this goes. You can't lose and talk shit. If you do, you look like a loser. That's what it is. So what we want to do today is we want to break down 3 tips that are going to help you perform better in your leagues. So we want to break down, in general, things that you guys should be looking for, because we know this is getting towards draft weekend, and then we know that, going into next week, that everyone's going to get spaced out with these drafts. So we're going to set your mind right. So this way you're able to make the best possible picks and deliver the best roster that you ever had, realistically. And one of the first things that you need to do, and that I speak to all the time, and that people just simply don't get, is know your settings. I've never seen so many people go into leagues and they just draft players and they don't even know what's going on. Some leagues, especially like in baseball, they play with batting average. Others play with on-base percentage. Right. In baseball, you have situations where it's like, okay, are you playing with points? Are you playing with categories? Are you playing in rotisserie? Okay, and all of these different leagues bring a whole different slew of challenges and settings, or challenges and I should say strategies.
Right,
not getting strategies.
And because also how many position players?
Yes,
you have.
Yes,
a lot of people. We had someone that asked us in our league, "Oh, how many?" Like these are things that you should know coming up.
Yes.
These are simple things. But these are the simple things that if you don't know and you're drafting and all of a sudden you have too many outfielders, like it's what you do. Hey, you only can play so much.
Right. And that's why that's the number one thing that we can advise you to do is before you draft, just look over your settings, see how many utility spots you have, how many starting pitchers come out of there, because maybe you have to start 4 pitchers with a minimum of 20 innings in this league. And, normally you don't take starting pitchers, but once you realize that everyone took starting pitchers early, it was too late for you because you didn't understand the value of it based on these scoring settings that, hey, top flight starting pitchers are worth even more in this league because I have to pitch at least 20 to 25 innings, and I'm not going to be able to just get by with starting waiver wire pitchers and closers because I won't have enough to win wins. I won't have enough to win Ks. I won't get enough ERA. So these are all things that you have to think about when you're drafting. How many positions are in each section? You know, are you getting 4 outfielders, 3 outfielders? How many utility?
Also, another thing is with us, especially in our league, if you have acquisition limits.
Yes.
So if you know, some leagues, hey, you could pick up
as many pitchers as you
want. So some people, hey, pitching might not be a big thing because you're thinking in your head,
yep.
Hey, I'm just going to pick up pitcher every day, go for Ks, go for wins, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And say, hey, listen, that sometimes works. But if you have a limit of acquisitions like we do, we only can pick up 5 people throughout the whole week. You're not going to be able to just get Ks and wins.
Nope.
Because you're so top heavy in hitting.
Nope. And that's such a great point because think about it. If you have a minimum of 20 innings and you have a maximum of 5 moves per week, that puts you in a situation where you need to make sure you're coming out of that draft with some solid starting pitching, or you're punting the whole category. Realistically, that you cannot survive in those leagues by just going with waiver wire guys and closers because your ERA and WHIP will be horrible. You barely get wins, and you have to pray that your C's bail you out. And if you're playing in categories-based baseball, 5 by 5 means that there's 10 categories that you get ranked on. And yeah, sure, you can punt most of pitching, but that means you have to win every single hitting category in order to win. You're putting yourself in a huge hole.
And you got to remember, injuries are coming, COVID's here. Listen, it's not as easy to maneuver around if you're only have 3 starting pitchers that are, hey, just they're not giving you Ks. They have a high ERA or high WHIP, whatever it may be. Again, you could batting. People also got to remember in baseball, it's hot and cold. A player might be hot, and then a player is cold, and then all of a sudden you're not winning that week because your batters are doing bad. But if you have pitching, hey, you know what? I could pick up some categories in pitching. To
supplement, because at the end of the day, you got to win 5-4, 6-4. Like, you know what I mean? You got to tie them someplace or beat them in at least 6. That's going to be your goal. You're going to go for 6. And I think that brings us to point number 2. Have a strategy. You need to be going into these leagues with some sort of strategy. Now, I'm not saying that you need to go into it saying, I'm going to draft 3 starting pitchers off the bat, and then I'm going to take two outfielders, and then I'm going to take a short. No, because that's going to set you up for disaster because you're being too rigid. Right. I firmly believe in the Bruce Lee method of you need to flow like water. You want to be shapeless. You want to be formless. You want to take the identity of whatever object or surface you're in. So if you're in a situation where all of a sudden, everyone's valuing hitters heavy and they're going boom, 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 and you're sitting at 8, 9, and a DeGrom is there, that's when you have to be like, okay, well, how do I want to build my team? And is this guy valuable enough? Because I think that once you start getting into it, you can come in with the strategy. Once you have that first pick and once you know your league setting. So if you're playing a rotisserie league versus a head-to-head league, that's going to change your needs. In a rotisserie league, starting pitching is more valuable because those stats carry over for the whole season. So the accumulation of a DeGrom adds up more than when you're going in a week by week, where some weeks you get 1 start, other weeks you get 2 starts. In the playoffs, you can miss out from starts. In Roto, all those innings that he built up are still there towards your totals and help you maintain your position. So knowing your strategies, matter more because in rotisserie leagues, pitching is more valuable than they are into head-to-head category leagues. And in and then when you're looking at points leagues, does average matter as much when you have a player that's able to just put up an overall point total where now you're not battling for, home runs, average, RBIs. So in those points leagues, you don't have to worry so much about the individual strategy behind it. It's more about get the best player available. So just, quick overarching points leagues, you want to grab the best player available, get as much points as possible, and just keep it moving. In head-to-head category leagues, it depends on the categories that you want to go for that you're going to build your team on. So when you start off with, you may take some pitching and be like, okay, I want to build, my 7, 8 categories on. I'm going to control the 4 pitching categories of ERA, WHIP, Ks, and wins. And I'm going to go for maybe like home runs, RBIs, and runs. And those are the 8 categories I go for. I'm not going to have a lot of stolen base guys. I'm going to go for low average guys because I'm spending my picks early on starting pitching so I can maintain that.
I think one of the things you said was good. Like, you can have an idea of what you want to pick. Hey, I want my 2 batters.
Yep.
But I think Steve makes a great point. Hey, the draft could go awry. Like, all of a sudden you see people pick all the starting aces, and all of a sudden you can't be left out in the cold. So you're going to have to change your minds and say, okay, listen, I would have loved to pick the bat, but listen, all the pitchers are going. All of a sudden, hey, the closers are gone. So maybe I just punt closing.
Or maybe in that situation, you see all those pitchers going, and you're like, damn, I'm going to miss out on those pitchers. But then you look and Freddie Freeman's there, and you're expecting Freddie Freeman to drastically outproduce that pitcher. You might have to say, well, screw it. I'm going to go batting heavy. I'm going to try to win 4 batting categories every week. And maybe I might take closers a little bit early and try to do a saves ERA whip combo with 4 batting categories. And maybe you go 4 or 5 batting categories where you're heavy because you go hitting heavy. And that's your 5 main base. And you try to take your 3 pitching, and now you're at 8. And then you have 2 wiggle room for losses. So you can lose 2 categories a week based on the 8 that you target, and you're still going to come out ahead in head-to-head categories. So I think that's one of the massive things to look at is have a strategy based on the settings that you're in so that you can make the appropriate decisions. In Roto League, everything carries over, so you don't want to tank in anything. You want to be at least middle to upper in every category, and that adds up to a victory. In categories, you can punt. I can punt saves, and that's a viable strategy because I'm not going to spend the capital on that closer there. I'd rather spend that capital on a starting pitcher there and get my bats early, or vice versa. I like to get some top starting pitchers, get the bats in the middle, and the bats at the end and the closers at the end, and just skip closers. In most cases, it leads to you skipping closers.
I think flexibility is a key.
Yep.
Have to be able to flexible. Again, pitching is one of the biggest things where people, they see closers go and they panic and they start getting, but there's no point in maybe picking up the Colorado's closer because at any moment he could lose it. So you're picking him up and there's another bat there. You rather get the bat that's going to.
Or it depends, because if you're in some situations like me, like Daniel Bard from Colorado is super interesting. Like last season, he was on my team. When he was healthy, he was pitching good. But to me, I got him off the waiver wire, or I'm getting him in my final 5 picks of the draft. And I would have already built up so many hitters because I punted the saves that once I'm getting to him, I'm able to take him without feeling the effects of, okay, well, if he sucks, I'm just going to cut him and pick up someone else, because realistically, a third of your roster is probably going to be cut throughout your year. Roughly, at least a third.
Whether it's injuries or they're just not performing, you're going to have to let them go.
Trade.
They didn't live up to whatever expectation you thought was going to happen. I mean, that's going to happen in baseball. It's a long season. That's one thing about baseball. It's a long season. You have to be able to be flexible, have position players where you could drop, leave,
And that, I think, leads me to our third and final tip. And that's going to be check for injuries. So many fantasy sports come around. You like players, you want them, but there's sometimes not the designation on them, or you didn't know they had this injury, or they had a little bit of an issue. And next thing you know, you draft them in the 5th, 6th round. I'm looking at you, Eloy Jimenez truthers, who may not have known that this guy is going to be out possibly the whole freaking season. And he's a great guy to have. But are you going to draft him this season with the possibility of only being for 1 month? No. And you need to know that going into these drafts, because his ADP is going to still look super high in there. And you're going to be like, oh, why is Eloy here? He's just a prime example of that. Or just, this is why I do like to draft on a computer sometimes, because I can research a couple of the guys before my pick goes and just see, oh, what's going on in spring? Oh, is there any injuries? Oh, is there anything going on like that? And I think with baseball especially, it's a good thing to check, because Tommy John and lingering elbow issues, especially with pitchers, become very prevalent throughout the year. So if you're able to keep yourself aware of these things, you put yourself ahead of the game. And another thing, like if you're checking for injuries, you can also check for updates. So like when players make changes to their approach, like one player I want to talk about, Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso seems like he's in better shape, that he's done a lot of things to maintain the balance and the repetition of his swing, which a lot of people will be like, well, I mean, what does that mean? He's doing better in spring, but But to me, that's huge because swing repetition is big with the consistency of being able to deliver that average, which dipped big last year. So if he's able to be more consistent with this bat, that could lead to an increase in his average.
Now, just to go back on something you said, you brought up Jimenez. That's a big name, right? You would think most people that are doing fantasy, they would know that right now.
Well, that did just drop though. So if you're not keeping up with your news.
But what I'm saying to you, there's other ones, there's smaller ones where you think that's not a big deal. There's like Nick Anderson from Tampa. He's hurt.
Yes,
all of a sudden now, who's going to be the closer? Is it Diego? Is it Castillo coming in? Another thing that you guys have to look at is rookies. Yeah, they might be great, but hey, are they limited to a certain amount? Like the pitcher from Miami, Sixto Pablo.
Sixto Sanchez.
Yeah, Sixto Sanchez. He's great. He looks like he's going to be the ace, but are they going to cut him off at 100 innings or 120? So remember, yeah, he might help you during the regular season, but you might not have him for the playoffs.
So
but
that also
take into consideration.
One of the reasons why you get some of these guys at discounted rates, and the question is going to be how late do you let them fall? Because, like he said, Sixto looks like he's going to be the ace, but is he going to be on the innings limit? And when you get into those deeper innings, that's where knowing the player starts coming into it. It's like, I know that in this round, he may not be there all season, but I do think if I get 100 innings from him, I'm going to win these games and I'll figure it out come the playoffs because someone else might get called up and I'll get them. And boom, because that's one thing in baseball. Prospects do get called up and some prospects hit and some prospects don't.
Yeah.
And, we've seen time and time again. We look at a guy like Luis Robert, beast. He came in, yes, his average was a little low, but overall, he delivered for a rookie, coming in, playing some great time. Sixto Sanchez last year, you came up at the end of the season. If you picked him up off the waiver wire, you were sitting there, swimming in money. You were like, yes, this guy is everything I wanted, and then some, and he cost you nothing.
Right.
And that leads me to the final bonus tip, which I'm going to give you. I know I told you 3. But I'm that kind of guy. I like to give you a parting gift.
You're so kind, Steve.
I'm so kind. And here's going to be your final parting gift, guys. And listen to me closely because this is the best tip that I can give you. And I promise you won't regret it. Make sure you follow the Daily Sporting and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter because we're going to cover all the up-to-date waiver wire moves and the player pickups and the prospects that are coming up and the type of guys that you might want to trade for all throughout the season because baseball is a marathon. It is not a sprint. What you draft is not going to be what you take to the championship. You're going to need to make pickups. You're going to get prospects. There's going to be waiver wire guys that you're going to need to get.
Yep.
Your draft is just the first step of the equation. And that's the easiest part when you think about it because all you're doing is picking up players. Once you start evaluating, because here's the beautiful thing that I love. Scientists, they'll look at something, they'll make a hypothesis, they'll analyze it. They'll say, does it work? Does it not work? And if it doesn't work, they're not married to it. They say, well, what went wrong? And they make the adjustments and they come back and they do another hypothesis and they go through it again. That's the same thing you do in fantasy sports. The hypothesis is, you know what? Sixto Sanchez is going to be a beast. Sixto Sanchez is going to get 150 innings. Guess what? Sixto Sanchez is pitching like a monster. I did great. My hypothesis was great. Or you go and be like, hey, Jared Kalenic, I think he's going to be a beast. Oh, guess what? They never called him up. He didn't get this. He didn't get that. I drafted him so high. He didn't do anything. But guess what? Now you're able to pick up that other waiver wire candidate that came, like Christian Pache from the Braves or Franco, Wander Franco from the Tampa Bay Rays comes up and boom, that's the guy that you need because he plays like a stud once he comes up. And Wander Franco, I'm going to say it right now. If you have a spot that gives you NA capability, draft him off the bat. Store him for later. That is the number 1 prospect in baseball. The kid plays shortstop. He's a dynamic bat. Once he comes up, you're looking at a Tatis type player, maybe better than Tatis. It's very possible.
But remember to have the space, like Steve said, if you have NA available,
DLs,
you could,
that's going to be huge. People get hurt in baseball all the time.
Yeah, so know that as well. Your settings, that goes back to settings. How many DL spots do you have? Hey, I have 2, I have 3, I only have 1. Yep. Hey, you can't just be picking up guys that are, you know.
And PPS, final tip. If you're in a league that gives you a couple DL spots, right, and you're drafting, and you're towards the end, right, and you see some pitchers and you're just like, ugh, they're not going to be back for a while. That's the perfect time to take them. Yep. Take the pitcher, put him on your DL. Now you have a free roster spot that you can go onto the waiver, And baseball is so massive that there's always going to be guys that people miss. And you go through the waiver wire and you pick someone up. And especially at the start of seasons, you want to be a little active on the waiver wire because there's a chance to catch the bigger breakouts early. Because once they start breaking out and they reach a good level for a while, someone's going to pick them up and test them out. So you want them kind of like, and those are the guys that can start going all season long. Yeah. Like Blake Snell. 2 years ago, people were ready to drop him. They dropped him, and then all of a sudden he turned it around, had a Cy Young season.
Yeah.
Guys like Jack Flaherty started off bad. Some people may have dropped him. Then he ends the season on incredible runs. Right. So these are things that you're going to start looking for. You're going to start running the trends, and we'll cover you with all that stuff. But we hope that we were informative for you guys. We hope we gave you enough tips and tricks so this way you could be really good in your drafts. You have an idea of what you're doing, idea of your scoring settings. We're going to be doing some more of these videos going into the weekend because we know this is draft weekend and we're putting this out. So we're going to be doing a mock draft for you guys just to give you an idea of what you want to do in categories leagues and in points leagues. Rotisserie, I think rotisserie is pretty self-explanatory. I may just do a separate video on that for you guys as well, just so we can give you that. And we'll give you some player battles because I think that's what a lot of people want as well, because, it's easy once you talk strategy and stuff like that. But then once it comes down to like, okay, who would you rather have? Trevor Story or Francisco Lindor?
Right.
Who do you think is a better value, Luke Voit or Dominic Smith or Pete Alonso? And these are all of the discussions that we'll have for you coming up this week and this weekend and going forward. So this way you can make the appropriate moves and decisions for your team. But we want to thank you guys for your time. We appreciate everything. We look forward to this new baseball season with you guys.
We're excited. We're excited, guys. We're out here. We're excited. We're ready to go. You're going to see us every week trying to give you as much information as possible. Hey, we understand you guys have families working. Yep. Let us release some of that pressure for you. Check us out. And help you talk that shit to your friends. And one last thing, just make sure if you have any questions about possible strategies or what you want to do or maybe changes to your team, feel free to drop them in the comments below. We answer all comments. If it's easier for you and you want to send us screenshots, please feel free to do that on Twitter or on Instagram. We answer everything that we possibly can. No DM goes unanswered. Sometimes it may take a little bit of time for us to get to it just because we don't see it, but everything does get answered. We're here to help you guys win, and that's why we started this. We're here for you guys to help you guys be better. So on that note, have a wonderful draft weekend, draft eve, draft day, whatever you guys want to call it. Have a great time. Peace out, y'all.